Hello, friends. Today we are going to do another session on branding. And what we are going to talk about today is why branding is important and the basics, the first step towards branding. How do you go about branding? Very often during the past 10 years of my consultancy, the standard response I get when we talk of branding is that, oh no, it's too expensive, I cannot afford it. The reality is, it's not too expensive. It is very expensive not to do branding because there are a lot of advantages of branding. And that's what we're going to look at today. So let me start sharing my screen and let's get on to today's session. So why and how of branding is what we are going to look at today. Why branding? That's the first question. There are a lot of advantages. Let's go through some of them. The first one is that it builds awareness. When you brand, people become aware of your product, aware of your name, and that leads to a recall where if they want to buy the product, they're going to think of you. It helps people to remember your company as a first recall, as I just said, when they want to buy the product that you're talking of or the service that you're talking of. Once you've started branding and people know about it, it becomes a top of mind recall, so to say. And therefore, it's always helpful because it will increase your sales. And it creates customer loyalty. If the USPs of your brand are such that it identifies, that the customer identifies with it, and that it sticks somewhere in his mind and his heart as something that he wants, he's going to be loyal to your brand. And naturally, with all these factors, it is going to add to, it is going to assist your sales and marketing efforts. It's going to increase your sales and increase the effect of your sales and marketing efforts. And a brand generally, based on the USPs and the unique points, you really need to create unique points. It creates a strong differentiation. And that differentiation gives you a competitive advantage. So when then people think about your product, they will think about the other vendors or the other suppliers of that or the other providers of that product or service. But you will have a competitive advantage because what you're talking of is something that they really want. This is a very important point, is that it transforms tangible assets into intangible assets. Now let's look at this. Typically, when you talk of a company and its value, so to say, you're going to talk of the buildings that they have, of the property that they have, of the machinery that they have. And that's all tangible assets which have a specific value based on the market. But once you start branding, you become what is really a wealth creator. So what happens when you brand is that these tangible assets don't form the core of your requirement, of your valuation. Okay? You create a goodwill of sorts. You create a perception of your company in the minds of people. And that perception of the company is what is very important and exponentially increases the value of your company. The multiples are immense. It's not like you're going to get a 1x or 2x of your tangible assets. You could end up getting as much as 10x, 20x, 30x of your tangible assets, and yet that's not really enough. So it creates a much higher value than the book value that one normally looks at. As I said it right in the start, especially small companies generally say that they cannot afford to brand. And I reiterate, in reality, they cannot afford not to. They have to brand, especially small companies. Bigger companies have clout. They can sell the product through various other channels and means. For smaller companies, getting a top of the mind recall is very, very, very important. And therefore, they cannot afford not to brand. Branding, everyone says, is expensive. But when they look at why branding is expensive, it is typically because they think one thinks of branding, one thinks of a nationwide exercise, a global exercise with lots of TV time and print media and various such factors which are expensive. Let's not discount that. They are expensive. But is that really the way to start branding? No, I don't think. There are better ways to do it. There are more economically affordable ways to do it. And today we are going to look at some of those. So let's look at some of the economically affordable actions that help small companies. This may not work for huge companies all the time, but that helps small companies to create, to build, and at the end of the day, to reinforce the brand. And this reinforcement is a ongoing perpetual process. You can't create and build a brand and sit back and say, okay, I'm done. No, you're not done. You need to constantly validate your brand. You constantly need to remind consumers that you exist. Okay. So having said that, now let's look at some of the easier or affordable ways of creating your brand. The first step is to define your brand identity. Be very clear. Clarify and define what are the unique characteristics of your brand. Because that is what your brand is going to stand for. That is what the consumers, the users of your brand are going to remember you by. So it can be various things. It can be design, it can be quality, it can be knowledge in case of certain service providers, especially. It can be speed of delivery, especially or online businesses. And it can be anything else that you define. In fact, if you come up with something that is not standard, trust me, your USP automatically goes to the top of the list because nobody else is offering it. So others, what is it? How do you define the USP? As I said, that USP is going to be how people remember you. So you have to figure out what is it that you would like people to think of when they speak of your brand. And once you have that, creating the USP, defining it, and all that is going to be much easier. So to define your brand, think it through. It's not that you just say, okay, I'm going to talk of quality. No, think it through because it has to be in sync with your capabilities, with your talents, and with your philosophy of your product. So check the strengths and zero in on that one thing. You can't have 20 USPs. You're just confusing the consumer. Think of that one USP that is your biggest and most exclusive USP. As I said, the more exclusive you are, there is nobody else who's going to be in that space in the mind of the consumer. And therefore, you are the top and probably the only recall when the consumer thinks of that USP. And how do you get about getting to this USP? You need to brainstorm. You need to brainstorm with your team because your team knows your business. Your team knows the strengths and weaknesses of your company. So sit down, brainstorm, and strategize with your team and hash out that one point that should be your USP. It's not easy to do it. It's time consuming. There are going to be arguments. There are going to be counter views. You have to deal with all that and then come out and say that, okay, this is going to be my USP. Along with that, if you can possibly do a consumer survey, and in today's time, it's not so important. What with WhatsApp and email and everything, a survey is pretty easy to do. You do a consumer survey of both your existing customers if you have any, if you're an established shop or something, but not yet branded, or the potential customers. Find out a target audience who's going to use your product or service and reach out to them. And try to figure out through the survey what are the things that they value most, what are the things that would make them buy your brand and stay loyal to your brand. So you need to do a survey to figure this out. Yes. Say when the iPhone was launched, nobody knew what that a phone could do those things. And therefore, doing a survey at that time with consumers was a very difficult task, because the USPs of the iPhone at that time were something that the consumer would not even be able to comprehend. In such a situation, what you need to do is to talk to consumers around that USP and figure out if that consumer is going to benefit and be interested in whatever it is that you're offering that is unique. As I said, restrict yourself to one USP. If you just have to, if it is absolutely necessary, you can make it two, but definitely not more than two. If there are more than two USPs that have been identified during your brainstorming and strategy sessions, it is a signal that you need to go back to the drawing board. You need to go back and have some more brainstorming and strategy sessions with your team till you identify that one USP. Why one USP? Because a consumer is not going to remember 20 strong points that you would mention. Also, communicating 20 points requires a lot of effort. And at the end of the day, with 20 points, the consumer remembering all of them is well nigh impossible. So it is better to stick to one, as I said, at the most two. Definitely don't go to three. Have those two USPs, communicate those two USPs, and make sure that they stick in the customer's mind. And you need to identify this one USP. As I've said before, just a few minutes back, you have to identify based on your capabilities and your expertise, your superiorities. What is it that you are capable of, and what is it that you're superior compared to the rest of the competition? And especially if you have a niche, or if you can create a niche, something that others don't offer, there will be nothing like it. Your brand is going to become desirable. Your brand is going to be the first and only, at least for some time. You have the advantage of the first. You know how it is. People copy ideas very easily. So you need to identify that one USP. If it is truly unique, something that is not offered by others, you stand a great chance of having something special. The second is very important, because I have seen so often, even in the case of certain larger companies, that their marketing material is not in sync. Their advertisement or their social media might just be focusing on new designs that they create every day. But whenever they are talking of their brand, they're talking of, say, price. Now, in such a situation, the consumer doesn't know whether what you are offering is consistently the same or not. Okay, so you need to get your marketing material in sync. And how do you do that? You have to check and validate that all the communications that you do, whether it's your website, whatever it is you focus on, the USPs, whether it's on your website, whether it's on any of the social media like Facebook, Instagram, or any other social media pages that you are on, all your brochures, all your ad material has to convey and be consistent in delivering that one message. And that one message is about your USP. So you need to get your marketing material in sync. When you give contradictory messages, all you're doing is confusing the consumer. And when a consumer is confused, he doesn't come to you. He will go to somebody who is more clear and where he understands what that person is offering. Today's consumers don't have the time to decipher and go and check and study what you're offering. They want to go by what you're talking and then make sure that that's what they are getting. Okay, so don't confuse the consumer with contradictory or multiple US messages. And as I said, 1, 2 at the most. If you have a third one, don't introduce it. Stay away from it. Maybe after some time, maybe if you feel that, okay, after the 2, you need to, or people have really in their mind ingrained what those 2 things are, and you want to introduce a third, or after some time in the business and after your brand has been established, you're coming up with something that is dramatically new, and you need to introduce a third USP, do go ahead. But otherwise, don't. So ensure that there is clear communication within the team also, and that they are all on the same page. The whole company must talk the same thing. They must all be talking of the same brand USPs. Okay. So the brand story has to be consistent. And this is especially important with the sales team and other team members who are customer facing. Because while your team member is talking to a customer, he has to be consistent with all the other communication that you are and the USP that you're specifying in all your media, communications. So if he talks of something different, explaining that, okay, he has to first focus on your main USP, and then he can say that in spite of this USP, we have very competitive in our pricing. We have quality that is up to international standards. You mentioned that, but your focus has to be that one USP. And this is not easily achievable. You need to train them. For some reason, in India, we do not train our people very well. I have seen big brands where the staff is not trained well, and therefore they fail. The customer is unhappy. The brand value automatically erodes. Even if it erodes with that one customer who has that unpleasant experience with your staff, that one person also is critical, because that one can expand if that person does not correct himself. If that person is not trained to communicate in the right way, that person can expand, and that expansion can be exponential. So train them and make sure that the story that they are giving people is based on the USP and that they've understood the USP. Just talking about something that is your USP is not good enough. They have to understand it. They have to be trained and told the story over and over again till it gets ingrained in their minds about why that USP is so unique. It's not just a USP for name. It is truly a unique sales proposition. And the best way to do all this, especially at the consumer level, is to demonstrate it with stories. Everybody loves a story. Whether it's a collection, whether it's a brand name, everybody loves a story. Everybody wants to know how and why of things. So make stories about whatever your USP is, what it is that you're communicating to the customer. It will be a better way for them to remember your brand. Just telling them that, okay, you are very good in quality. That's there. They'll remember you for quality, but giving them stories about your quality, okay, that's going to be something that they will remember far more easily. From my industry, from my experience in jewelry, let me tell you, there was a time when women used to love wearing chiffon saris, and they would wear rings. Now, a lot of rings have the prongs and pave setting. Okay. And if those prongs and paves are not smooth, they can get stuck in your sari and even at times spoil your sari. So create a story of this where a consumer is appreciating the quality and the smoothness and the eye to detail in making sure that the prongs, whether it is prong setting or power setting, are done so well so that your clothes, they don't stick in your clothes and they don't spoil your clothes. Build a story. They are going to remember that far more easily than just the word quality. And as I said, make stories with examples of customers react to your USP. That's what we just talked about. Take testimonials and statements from your customer. Whenever a customer mentions something or comes and congratulates you or thanks you for something, ask them if they're willing to give a statement. They don't have to necessarily write down. You write it down for them because it's important to you. But yes, you need to take the permission to use what they are saying so that there's no challenges later on. And take testimonials. Maybe once a year, get some of the customers who have bought things from you into your room, into your shop for a tea or a coffee or an ice cream or whatever. It doesn't have to be very elaborate. But create that afternoon off from just routine selling. You might sell additional when all of them come. That's a bonus. But call them to your shop, not to sell, but so that you can talk to them. Your team can chat with them and get testimonials from them about what is good and superior about your brand. And all this needs to be done with real life cases. When somebody says, oh, I love your quality, make sure that your team is trained to ask them what it is you like. And can you give me an example? Can you give me a story about how that particular USP has helped you or why you are appreciating it? Build this story with real life case studies from your customers so that it becomes more authentic. And then when you got a lot of these stories and a lot of testimonials and a lot of statements from consumers, spend some money, spend some time if you have the expertise yourself to create a video where these stories and testimonials are all viewed together so that they make a complete company or brand story. And that is something that you must send to your customers for them to realize the value, the effectiveness of your USP. So demonstrate with stories and create visual association. The easiest way to remember something is to have a visually identifiable object. So there are various elements that you can use to create this thing, and it is easy to remember your brand. There are things like logo. Everybody, if I show you the star, three-pronged star with a circle, in a circle, I don't think any of you are going to take even 30 seconds to tell me what that logo stands for. So create a logo. Or if I show you the two golden arcs, I think everybody will tell you straight away, oh, that's McDonald's. And there are so many such logos which are readily identifiable and people know about them. So there's a logo. The colors. I think we've talked in our previous our previous episode on branding. Tiffany's blue color. I think that is one company that has used color to actually become a recognizable, visually recognizable brand element. Okay, and because the color is unique. Okay, there are a lot. Coke is always red. IBM is always metallic steel kind of look. But this is a unique color. They've probably created a Pantone shade of their own. And therefore, colors can help go a long way. Symbols. Okay, like take the Thought Shots logo. The three circles, the three colors, and whatever is in those circles is identifying what that company is about. There is a camera to show that I'm going to put up videos like this. There is a bubble of text bubble to show that I write articles. There is there is a goal to it. That logo has a goal to it, and the symbols communicate without using too many words of what that company is about or what the USP is about. In fact, create icons of your USP. It's worth spending the money to get an artist, a nice creative person. If you have somebody within the organization, nothing like it. But create icons of your USP. As I said, it's much easier and you use no words. So therefore, it's easier for that person to recognize and say that, okay, this icon stands for this. I know this is the USP. And those icons at some stage, maybe 10 years, 15 years down the line, might become so popular that for all you know, you might want to change your logo to that icon. Okay. There's so many companies that rebrand themselves consistently. So create icons of your USP. Visual associations make it easy to remember and convey much more than just words. Because when you show that icon, for some time you explain what that icon stands for. But once that icon has been established in the minds of people, then it is very, very easy to just show the icon and the rest of the words will automatically come to mind of the consumer. So, having said all this and having told you how important branding is, let me warn you, branding is complicated to create and challenging. As I said, for a company to figure out that one USP which they will continuously live with and fulfill is not an easy task. Generally, you will, when you start this thing, you might have 20, 30 points. And to thrash it out with your team, strategize, and come to that one point is complicated. And then to manage that USP is another story, another task altogether. Brands can be fragile. As I said, one mistake by somebody and a brand can take a big hit. There are brands in India that I respect, but over the last few years, I've seen that the brand's USPs are all going haywire. I have written about one of the brands. And it's not just with one of their companies that I have had challenges. It's with multiple companies of the same brand. Okay, that company really needs to step back and look at what they're doing. Okay, it can be fragile. Okay, that brand is not yet destroyed, but that is because it has been known for donkey's years, probably 100 years. But even 100 years can be wiped out in a couple of years if you're not careful. And whatever is the brand message that you are trying to send about the USP, it must become an obsession within the entire organization. So say you're talking of quality as your USP. Your product quality has to be there. But then quality also has to be a part of everything else that you do, your service, the way you talk to people, your accounts department, everybody, it has to become an obsession. And they have to be inherently be able to give that level of quality that you are promising to the consumer. It's not only about product, it's about every aspect of the business. And brands need to be nurtured like children. There is a culture to be built. As I said, if your quality, every department has to be conscious and focused on delivering that quality promise that you are making. You're making a promise as a brand. And that brand incorporates various things, service, quality, design. Everywhere you need to make sure that you are giving the top-notch quality. And therefore, that whole organization, that brand needs to be nurtured pretty much how we do with our children. And you have to inculcate the right culture in them. That's what we do. The culture that we inculcate in our children is going to stay with them long after we are gone. And that is very important. So branding, at the end of the day, please understand, is not just for big corporations. Okay? Branding is something that everyone needs. And especially in today's world, where the consumer is spoiled for choice. Unless you are in a product that you alone, today even Apple cannot say that the iPhone is the only choice of a phone. There is Samsung. There are so many of them. Okay. Yes. Apple's operating system has advantages. We are not going into Apple or talking about Apple's advantages right now, but their USPs are still maintained. And that is why they get away with a price that is higher than the rest of the pack, because their product does promise something better. And today's consumer is spoiled for choice. Phone is just one of the examples. Anywhere you go, they are spoiled for choice. And for them to find out, you will, at the click of a few mouse clicks, you will find out which is the best of the brand, what are the consumer reviews, what are the pricing comparisons. So everything is known. So the more unique your USP, the better you are, because they have lesser things to compare with, especially if that USP is something that the consumer really wants. So branding is crucial, and it gives a competitive edge and a top of mind recall to your product or service. Remember this thing. This is something that you have to ingrain in your mind. And please take a decision to create a brand, especially if you're a small business, because you need to be able to counter those people who are big spenders, who are capable of big spends. You need to develop USPs that are going to compete with them, and you're going to need to be able to outwit them so that you sell more product and your growth remains constant and ever growing. Okay. Hope this branding why and how has been helpful to you. We will do some more sessions on branding, and I hope you enjoyed it. As usual, I keep repeating myself. Do like the video, do like and subscribe to my channel, and have a great day. Thank you.